According to seldom cited website Games Radar, Naughty Dog, arguably PlayStation's most important first-party team, has hired systems designer Anders Howard, who most recently worked at Ubisoft, but is actually known for his time as Epic. So why is this relevant? Well, here's what his LinkedIn CV says in part about his time at Epic, which lasted from 2014 until earlier this year. Quote, I joined Epic during the early days of Fortnite as a systems designer. I designed many of the core systems of Fortnite Save the World from the ground up with a focus on combat model, economy, the skill tree, content scaling, and progression. I would go on to ship 8 seasons of live content for Save the World. Later, I moved over to Fortnite Battle Royale, where I helped form the core of Battle Pass progression strategy, delivering overwhelming value for that product as to as many players as possible, end quote. He later goes on to add that, quote, as the resident expert, I consulted on Battle Pass integrations across Rocket League and Fall Guys, end quote. Meanwhile, for his short stint at Ubisoft, which lasted only 10 months spanning this calendar year, he writes in part, quote, reporting to the game director, I am the vision holder for social and economic systems, end quote. So what's his new role called at Naughty Dog? Well, at Epic, he was a senior systems designer, and at Ubisoft, he was a lead systems designer. Within Sony's walls, he'll now be a principal monetization designer. And now we get to the crux of the issue. What does this have to do with Naughty Dog? The obvious answer is the long-awaited standalone Factions game the team is making for PS5 and likely PC as well. So now we're left to wonder what this tells us, and I think what it says is obvious. Factions could very well be a free-to-play game with an economic system designed by none other than the dude who designed monetization in the most popular free-to-play game ever made. This rather ominous news came on the back of more exciting news for Naughty Dog. However, at least in the form of a Kickstarted The Last of Us board game, sanctioned by Sony and its crown jewel developer. The board game, called Escape the Dark, has already surpassed its asking goal of $140,000 by more than 3 times over, and by the time this podcast airs on Patreon, you'll have 3 weeks left to support it. So good news there. But this news of this guy, Anders Howard, getting hired, and I did a pretty extensive reading about him when I saw this. Chris, we'll go to you first. I read about this guy, and it was only making the rounds in more hardcore sites, like hardcore PlayStation sites. But I was like, no, this is a pretty big deal. The reason I think it's a big deal is because for Ubisoft to court him from Epic must have cost him an arm and a leg, and then something either went wrong at Ubisoft or he was courted away immediately to come to Naughty Dog. So this guy is obviously valuable. What do you think this says about Naughty Dog's future intent? They're hiring the guy who created the Battle Pass for Fortnite.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really change anything about how I saw this game to begin with. Like, I was always under the presupposition that Factions was going to be a free-to-play game that was going to be not exclusive, and then that was likely going to be heavily monetized. It seemed like I mean, it all lines up with what Sony's intentions were about, oh, wait, we're going to ship this many live service games by this year. And it's like, well, you only have so many studios, you only have so many IP. When we knew about a multiplayer version of Factions, it would only make sense that would be a free-to-play game. Maybe this is a... Man, I don't know. It's disappointing, but it's also very much what I expected. Like, we are going to have a free-to-play Last of Us game with monetization and likely $20 skins and all sorts of weird shit, because if you can figure out, if you put out a game and it makes $3 billion every couple months, or even less than that, even less time than that, and more money than that, like, why would you not try to seek that out? Like, it makes perfect sense. So the fact that they were able to get this guy is pretty impressive to me. That's like the most interesting thing, is that, because surely Sony isn't the only person, or Sony isn't the only conglomerate looking to do this. You know, like, there's got to be a lot of people, especially in the games industry, a lot of companies that are trying their hand at getting into this space, as there have been for the last several years. So the idea that Sony was really, really adamant and really, really competitive about this person in particular speaks to his value. But I don't know if there's much more to say other than I knew this. I've been telling you on the show for a while now that this is what we're going to get.
Yeah, just to be clear about your revenue numbers too, Fortnite makes about $5 billion a year. So
yeah. Crazy.
That's insane. 2021, $5.8 billion made, gross, not net. But I'm sure that's
it's gross.
Almost all net. Yeah, it's gross. It's gross in its own special way. Dustin, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I feel like I have a really different perspective on this, in that we've seen good and bad and everything in between when it comes to monetizing free-to-play games. Specifically, when you think of bad examples, the early days of Overwatch with loot boxes. Thankfully,
Right.
we've moved away from that. Fallout 76 charging ridiculously stupid prices on mundane items that people don't want. And through all this, I feel like if they're going to monetize the game and having the guy that designed the Fortnite Battle Pass, this is the best possible person to do it, in that people happily pay for a Battle Pass and get a ton of value out of it. For example, the Battle Pass costs 950 V-Bucks, which is approximately like $9.50. It's about $10. And so through it you can unlock tons of, it's like the best bang for your buck if you want to get in-game items, whether it's new skins or emotes or whatever. The value is 100% there. You just have to unlock it and play the game in order to get it. So that's cool. But in addition to that, when you play the Battle Pass, you unlock more V-Bucks through it. In fact, if this website is accurate, this sounds right because I remember this from when I played Fortnite. So $9.50 is the price, and you can unlock 1,500 V-Bucks as you play. So if you buy a Battle Pass and play through all of it, you will get enough V-Bucks to buy the next Battle Pass if you want, and the one after that. Now, obviously, it's a way to encourage people to earn V-Bucks and then spend it in the shop, and maybe you don't have quite enough, and so you spend another $5 or $10 or whatever. But
Yeah.
and obviously, I'm not trying to defend $20 skins. I mean, to each their own. If you want to spend $20 on a Dragon Ball Z character in a game, I honestly was almost tempted to do it. If it was One Piece, I may have felt different. But I think when it comes to this is a good situation. People love battle passes, especially ones that are done right, not like Halo's battle pass, which really sucked. So if we're going to do this, let's do it in a way that people feel like they're getting what they're paying for. And this guy clearly knows the way to do it, as he created many successful monetization aspects in a lot of very successful games. So to me, this is something to celebrate.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the way I feel about it is like, you know how the best place to get shot is like the hand or the foot?
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of like that, where it's like, I guess I'll take a bullet to the hand if it means avoiding it to the head, but I'd still prefer not to get shot. And it's just kind of how it feels, where it's like, this is the world we're in now. It's like, this is free to play. This is modern multiplayer. And I guess this is the best case scenario, but at the same time, it's that in and of itself is bad news, you know? But that's also just like a pessimistic view, I guess.
It's conceivable that, although incredibly unlikely, that he was hired to do something else, but it's just his actual title. That's why I brought up the titles and was looking through his CV to see what his actual titles were. The title is most explicit actually here with Naughty Dog. So it's obvious what's happening here. I think we just have to put two and two together and assume that it has to do with factions. It could have to do with some other game entirely. I hope not. I mean, I think what we should be hoping for right now is that it has to do with factions, because that only indicates that there's more of this shit coming, which we really hope is not the case. Naughty Dog doing a free-to-play game is pretty bold, if that's what they're actually going to do. Pretty bold. I still feel like it's going to be a game you buy, though, and then it's going to be supported with Battle Pass, Game Pass, or Expansion Pass type things. I just don't feel like...
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. It seems
That
very
makes sense,
risky.
Colin.
What?
That makes sense. Like Call of Duty is a full retail game, $70, and the Battle Pass is going to come out next week for it, and people buy that on top of it. So it's certainly possible there can be an additional Battle Pass for factions.